Welcome to my show, Enlightenment. I'm your host, John Robert Cruz, and right now we're going to have an enlightening interview with Elbert T. Chester, a certified public accountant, a certified financial planner, a personal financial specialist, and last but not least, a diplomat of the American Board of Forensic Accounting. How you doing, Mr. Chester?
John, excited to be here.
Thank you, thank you. You know, we've been trying to do this interview for quite some time, and I really appreciate you making the time to come here to the studio. Elbert, there's a lot of people that want to know about what you do. Like I said, you're a person with a lot of qualifications, a lot of certifications. What are your specialties?
John, what our CPA firm does, we specialize in churches, compliance work, non-for-profit organization, and we get a lot involved in financial planning.
For individuals?
For individuals as well as for organizations. We set up retirement accounts, retirement programs. We get involved with investment work, mutual funds, stocks.
All right. You also do taxes?
That is correct.
Okay. You also involved in home ownership, et cetera,
home ownership, life insurance policies.
Okay, very good. Now, let's focus on your church aspect of your business. Why should churches be incorporated?
John, that's an excellent question. Churches are not understanding the liability issue when it comes to incorporation. When a church is not incorporated, they are at the exposure of having an individual or a group of people come together and sue not only the church, but its membership, its board of trustees, the pastor, and even his family. They can even go after his assets, his home if he owns one, a car, automobile, his furniture, whatever he's got, they can go against that because there's no incorporation. What an incorporation does is protect the church as well as protect the members, the trustees, and the pastor. They can sue the church, but they cannot penetrate the corporate veil and go to that of the pastor or his family.
Okay. Now tell me a little bit about a 501c3 exemption. What exactly is that?
A 501c3 is a very technical and complex process. It's where we go through a filing with the federal government and we seek to get the claim of a 501c3 in a church or any not-for-profit in which they do not pay taxes on their income. They can generate income, but they don't pay any taxes. But it's a 23-page process. It's a long host of questions that we have to go through. And what the IRS does, it takes 3 to 6 months to even go through this process. But it's a very powerful process, and I advise every single church and not-for-profit to seek out the 501c3 process.
Good. Now, how should a church set up parson allowance and housing allowance for a minister or pastor, et cetera, et cetera?
That is a very important question because every church has a pastor. And pastors are paying unnecessary taxes because the structure of their compensation arrangement is not being publicly declared correctly in their resolutions, in their bylaws, or in their minutes. What they should do is separate their salary from their parsonage allowance because parsonage allowance and or housing allowance is federal, state, and local tax exempt. That's right, no taxation on housing allowance. Only Social Security taxes are being paid out of that fund. Salaries are paid out federal, state, and local. But by penetrating and by understanding the concept and by calculating correctly, ministers can save lots of monies in their taxes.
Okay. Now tell me a little bit about church compliance with the IRS. A lot of churches are getting into trouble with the IRS, right?
That is correct. That is correct. What's going on is the IRS is finding out every day that churches are not in compliance because churches don't have books and records. I was at a church a couple weeks ago, and they were bringing in maybe $1 million of donations, and tithes, and offerings. To my surprise, no books, no records. They even had a daycare. They had a school. No books, no records. IRS says you're a church, you're a business. Whether you're a church or an IBM company, you're considered to be the same because you're a corporation. You need books of records, you need bylaws, you need minutes, you need resolutions, you need internal control, you need structure. These are the things we come to the board and we come and advise and we try to put this into place for the churches.
Wow, that's very enlightening. Now tell me a little bit about why churches are being audited.
John, why churches are being audited is because churches are not in compliance. IRS is finding out that there are reporting forms that the churches are not preparing and not submitting to the IRS. 1099s are not being reported on. W-2s, W-3s, 1096s, parsonage allowances, salaries. These reporting requirements are not being met. Quarterly tax returns are not being prepared and not being filed. All these lend itself to an audit, and the IRS can come in, they can seize property, they can seize the accounts of the churches, and this is where there's large exposure for the churches.
Okay, now tell me, what internal control structure needs to be implemented by churches?
Every church should have a set of books, whether it be a single entry or a double entry books of entry. They should have a cash receipts, a cash disbursements, a general ledger, a trial balance. They should have an accounting record, some kind of accountability where they can record their tithes, their offerings, their donations, their expenses, some type of formula, some type of books. They should have payroll records. All these things should be in place as part of their accounting records. Some type of internal control where there's requirements for people who are on salary. Those are 1099s, those are independent contractors. This must be in writing, must be in resolutions, must be in minutes. These are things that are good for the church to have.
Okay. Now this next question is a little bit touchy. I'm sure it will be very touchy with some ministers. Should ministers report love offerings as taxable income?
John, this is a very sensitive question. It's very sensitive, and love offerings, whether you call it a love offering or a gift from heaven, a gift from God, a gift from the Spirit, you know, all the IRS is concerned about is that if you're receiving income and it's taxable, they want their tax money. And love offerings are taxable to the minister or to the recipient of the love offering. And taxes should be earmarked and designated for as they're paying their taxes.
Okay. Now, my last question. How have you helped churches? Like you said, a lot of churches are being closed, but how have you helped churches specifically?
Every week we have new churches coming to our organization, and we've set up their incorporation, we've set up their bylaws, we've set up their minutes, their internal control. We've assisted them in establishing books of records, books of original entry, establishing their assets. Some churches don't have assets. Some churches didn't know they have assets. We bring together a balance sheet, an income statement, financial statements. We bring them into a being where they can see what they've got and where they're sending their money, their expenses. We establish their compliance structure, their internal control structure, their housing allowance, their salaries, their compensation. We go through any meetings that the board might have. These are things we go through for churches.
Well, at this point, I'd like you to tell the audience how they can get in touch with you. Say your telephone number and your address.
Well, the number you can reach us at is at 718-291-2722. Our offices are located at 148-45 Hillside Avenue, Suite 200, and that's in Queens. It's one block off Sutphin Boulevard where the F trainer is arrived at. Our telephone number again is 718-291-2722.
Elbert, thank you for coming.
Thank you, John, for being here.
And we're going to continue at a later date with some more interview, okay?
Thank you, John.
This is John Robert Cruz, and now we're going to our next segment.